If you give me just one moment to let it kick in. And I'll let you know as soon as it does that.
Who are we missing? Able, 1, 2.
And you should be all set, Abel. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Colleen. All right. Well, welcome, everybody. This is the work session for our town council meeting tonight. We'll get the real thing started at 7:30. This will hopefully give us a little time to prepare for tonight's meeting and also work out whatever final kinks there might be in our Zoom presentation. One thing I've already not done a good job of it is since some people may be joining our meeting via phone and not be able to see us, we should identify ourselves as we're speaking or starting to speak. So this is Abel Collins. Rob, are you there with us?
Rob's muted right now.
Do I need to unmute him?
I think he just unmuted himself.
All right. No, I think I'm all set now. I am calling in from a smartphone because two very large trees in my front yard, the power grid in this part of the woods. I'm stuck at the kitchen table on a generator, and I am at something of a disadvantage because I don't have all of the materials for this meeting on the smartphone. I do have my laptop with me, but I don't have access to the network. So we're proceeding here with a little bit of a tenuous.
Okay, Rob, do you think you can find your way to a better location, or are you trapped in your house?
Yeah, unfortunately, the power lines are across the driveway.
Goodness. Okay.
He's trapped.
I knew this was going to happen.
But
Well,
Colleen, if you do have any files that you need if you need to send to me, and then we can screen share, if that's helpful at all. Either Susan or I can screen share.
Yep. So I think that's, yeah.
I just brought up
Gonna
the
be-
agenda so we can screen share that if necessary.
Let's do that because that's helpful. Then we can walk through the session, the pre-session now. If we come across anything during the pre-session that is going to be a major difficulty, I'll let you know. The bulk of the creation that I would make to the council tonight that you're not going to be able to see visually is really just some thoughts on where we are with regard to the budget. And I can talk through those, and we've budget hearing coming up on Wednesday night anyway, where we will be able to display the graphics. So I'm not too concerned about disrupting the meeting simply because we don't have full access to my files. I think we're going to be fine with that in that regard. So let's walk through the agenda.
all right, very good. It is.
Is that?
This is Abel. So yeah, it does look like a pretty light agenda. So I think we can muddle our way through here. I'll just sort of go through the agenda, top to bottom. So licenses are all consent agenda items. Most of the communications are as well tonight. We have 7G, which is emails from Karen Humes, Benjamin Wood, Margaret and James McGregor concerning pedestrian safety issues on Middlebridge Road.
And on that, Mr. President, we are prepared tonight to, let the council know where we are, what we've been up to. I spoke to John Schock and Chief Jaber this afternoon about our current efforts, our previous efforts, and really the bottom line on where we are on Middlebridge is before the unfortunate fatality on Middlebridge, we had met with the president of the Association on Middlebridge, Tim O'Neill, and had laid out a strategy for making some improvements or technology on Middlebridge. We've accelerated that schedule to some extent. We're going to take advantage of the fact that we have some savings from the snow plowing budget this year, and we'll be able to purchase 2, and it may end up, depending on the savings, being 4 speed feedback signs for Middlebridge Road. We're intending to begin implementing a speed feedback sign program across town. This would have been one of the first locations where we did that. At any rate, since the savings are available to us, we can accelerate that deployment. The one big question in our minds about where we go with Middlebridge is there's been a request for the installation of stop signs at Torrey Hill Road and Middlebridge. At the intersection, folks would like to see a 3-way stop sign. The last time that study was done, there was an indication that it might result in more rear-end collisions. And we really need to sort of work through whether the travel numbers are different, whether circumstances are different than they were the last time that study was done, before we recommend or before we actually put up stop signs on Middlebridge and Road. We were planning to do that study now, but we really can't rely on the data we collect currently because the COVID-19 event has interrupted traffic in such a way that the numbers we get now will not be representative of what's actually normal circumstances happening at that intersection. So at this point, I think we're going to have to wait until we get over the COVID stay-home environment and can begin to count real meaningful traffic flows at that intersection. So I think that we're probably looking at the study to determine whether or not it is appropriate to put a stop sign or stop signs at Middlebridge and Torrey Hill, really not happening until July or August, which isn't a bad thing. That's the peak, those are the peak travel months anyway. So we, in sum here, will be able to implement some improvements. John may be on the line now and talk at length about all of the improvements that have been made down on Middlebridge Road over the years. But we can do some more work down there immediately, or at least as soon as we know for sure what the balance of the winter savings is. And at that point, we can be employing those speed feedbacks and start counting traffic to determine whether or not we're going to cause more rear-end accidents by installing stop signs or not.
Okay. This is
We got
Abel.
John on the line?
Yeah, John's here. John, you have to unmute yourself.
I just did. Okay. John Chalk, Public Services Director for the town. If you want, I mean, I can walk through everything we've done to date or give you more of a detailed update on what Rob was talking about. I don't know what the council's preference is.
Well, this is Abel. I think we can wait if you'd like until the meeting itself begins and we have more of the public listening in for an update, because I think people would be interested to hear that and don't need you to repeat yourself unnecessarily, I guess.
That's fine.
One thing when we do get to it is, if it doesn't make sense to put in a stop sign because of the traffic counts, what other options are there? Is a question I have. So anyway, if you can prepare to answer that question, I'll.
Understood.
John, this is Bryant. The other thought I had, 'cause we went through different scenarios, speaking to other people in the public, would a traffic camera be a bad thing over there?
So the thing with the camera is right now they're permitted in school zones, but I believe the general law doesn't permit them outside of school zones. It'd have to take a bill with the General Assembly to get through, which I don't know how much likelihood that would have. I mean, even where they have them with the school zones has been pushed back. So I guess that's more of a policy question for you folks, if that's something you feel like approaching with the local delegation or not.
There might be a problem with that.
So,
I was saying there might be a problem with that because even if you were to do something there, there are several other places in town with similar issues, and you might be getting requests for those everywhere.
so this is Rob Zernetsky. I actually am a proponent of traffic signs. I think that they do change behavior. I worry about devices like these feedback signs, which have no immediate consequence or have no consequence whatsoever. People tend to become habituated to traffic calming devices that don't impact them in the pocketbook or don't damage their vehicles. Speed bumps work because you don't want to destroy your speed cameras work because you don't want to that having been said, Peter Scores in Mike's office recently put together a memorandum on where we can deploy cameras, and we're currently authorized. The municipality is currently authorized to deploy speed cameras, traffic cameras in school zones, as John has indicated. I don't think we're going to be able to stretch, Bradley School or Prout School as being close enough or having a tight enough relationship to Middlebridge to deploy them there.
All right. Thanks, Rob. This is Abel. Just to keep us moving through the agenda, then communication J is an email dated April 3rd from Jane Bissett concerning town's methods of communicating. I feel like hopefully this Zoom format answers a lot of the concerns that she expressed, but maybe we can go over that again once we get to that item. Then we have new business. If you want to take us, or do you have the agenda in front of you at this point, Rob?
I do, although it's in Susan's, on Susan's laptop, so I have only limited control. But
I see it there before.
a resolution authorizing Yep. So a resolution authorizing, this is Rob Zernetsky, I'm sorry. Resolution authorizing the renewal of the town council's declaration of emergency adopted at an emergency session on March 15th. This is really a resolution necessary because the resolution adopted by the town council, the declaration of emergency made on March 15th, is due to expire on April 15th. So 2 days from today, we will no longer have the authority to enforce, the local authority to enforce the orders that have been put in place locally, which mirror the orders that were put in place by the governor. So one of the things the governor and the state have been trying to do is to make sure that municipalities are sort of hand in glove with the state on the executive orders and the administrative orders to ensure that there's local and state enforcement that can be done hand in hand. So I would ask that the council reaffirm the emergency declaration to May 8th is the date that the governor's the state's current declaration goes to. I will say that I think that we're probably going to be in COVID-19 response longer than the May 8th, but on advice of the solicitor, I don't think we can go beyond that. I don't know that it makes sense for us to go beyond that. Again, we're trying to be hand in glove with the state, and since the state declaration is to May 8th, it makes sense for us to go to May 8th with our declaration. If the council so orders, then tomorrow, I will change the dates of all outstanding local orders to go to May 8th.
All right, thanks, Rob. I was able. Item B is the municipal aggregation.
So this has come in, we have Julie Mason here. Is Julie actually on the call yet?
Would she be an attendee or a panelist?
I don't know. Colleen, is Julie in the waiting room?
I don't see Julie right now. Let me double check. I know we have Zach here, if he was going to speak to that.
Okay, Zach, are you prepared? I can work through this. Julie's been working with the City of Providence quite closely on this. The City of Providence has concluded its negotiations with the vendor, and the vendor and the city have entered into a contract that allows the city to begin to design a program for electric aggregation for citizens of Providence. We had met with the City of Providence and with the vendor, Good Energy, and had, contemplated simply writing the Providence contract as opposed to trying to go out and find a better vendor. Providence had done a full-blown, competition. They had 2 respondents. Good Energy was the winning respondent, and really a very strong program. It is a complicated procurement. It's not an easy procurement to administer. And Providence had developed some expertise and actually has a sustainability office, and therefore has a built-in expertise around the program that we thought made sense for us to participate. That made it reasonable for us to be participating with Providence by simply writing their contract. Of the 2 vendors who responded to the Providence competition, we would have selected, had those been the 2 that responded to a competition that we had held locally, Energy would have been the respondent that we would have selected, at least on the staff level. Now, we also have spoken to the sustainability committee members, and they've got nothing but strong positive things to say about Good Energy. And as the council will recall, Good Energy had been before the council and had answered a number of questions as well. So this resolution would permit us to go ahead and begin negotiating with Good Energy, writing off of the Providence contract, specific terms and conditions applicable to Kingstown. It would not authorize us to enter into that contract. It would authorize us to negotiate the contract with Good Energy to come back for approval. This is basically, do we want to proceed?
Great. This is Abel. Any questions for Rob on that item?
Abel, can I interject for a second, Abel? It's Mike Ursillo.
Sure. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Thank you. I just want to, before we get to the public hearing on the declaration of emergency, I just wanted to state that as written, it actually goes to May 11th, which is when your first May council meeting is. And it says in it, if the governor's order is not extended after May 8th, it will expire. So that way, in that last paragraph, you are covered. The guess is that it will be extended, but at least it gives you the opportunity to act, and you will not have a gap between May 8th and May 11th if in fact it gets renewed. So just wanted to clarify that. So thank you.
Mike. This is Abel again. Moving on in the agenda, new business item D is some proposed amendments to the town council's rules on commission, committee, and board appointments. Rob, this came up as.
Susan, you want to?
Okay, Susan.
This came up at the last meeting when there was discussion regarding the reappointment of a member to the Zoning Board of Review. And it was thought that just like the council interviews candidates for initial appointments to these boards, that perhaps it would be a good idea to re-interview candidates whose terms are about to expire who do want to be reappointed. So the solicitor's office revised our existing policy to tweak it up a little bit and to add that reappointment interview section to it.
So this is Debbie Kelso. Is this just specific to the zoning and planning board, or is it specific to all boards?
This is for all boards.
Okay, thank you.
Rory McEntee, I got a quick question here. Number 6 under requirement for membership. I'm sorry, number 5, no person shall be appointed to serve concurrently on more than one commission, committee, or board. Do we currently have members of boards who serve on multiple committees or boards?
We do. This is Rob Zernetsky. We do. We have Kenny Burke is an example, serves on both the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the Affordable Housing Collaborative.
Okay, so I believe that members of a committee can be effective on multiple committees. I think we should strike number 5. That's my opinion. I don't know if other council members feel that way or differently.
This is Abel. I think we can definitely take that point up when we're discussing the item in regular sessions. I think it's a valid point, seeing as we have people doing it effectively at this point. And maybe it makes sense if, to what Deb was saying, delineate between, the policy-making commissions and boards versus some of the advisory ones.
Right. I don't think we need to, it's Debbie Kelso again. I don't think we need to extend this to every board. I think it's the policy making boards.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I agree with you, Deb.
All right, so that's good. I'm glad we're tackling. Somebody else wanted to speak on this.
I'm sorry, this is Susan. This policy is for all of your commission, committee, and board appointments. If you want to restrict the interviews of people up for reappointment just to those specific boards, we will have to amend this further. Because right now it applies to any board or commission.
And is it it's Debbie Kelso again, is it a may choose to re-interview or a must or shall?
Says May.
So if it's a may, then I'm okay with leaving it open to any board because we
Correct.
may choose just to pick a few.
Under
But if it's
item
a
number
must,
1,
then-
yep, item number 1 under the appointment review process says the town council shall review each application and may invite specific candidates for appointment and or reappointment to an interview with the council.
Okay,
Listed as may.
then I'm
I'm going to allow you that
fine with
option.
language then, perfectly fine.
Okay.
All right, this is Abel again. So the rest of the agenda are some, more formality type things. But Rob, if you wanted to speak to
Yeah, we have,
under F.
sure, we have 2 contract items tonight. One is a large item, $203,000 contract. John, are you still online?
Yes, John Shock, you want to speak to the radio, the SCADA one?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Okay, so the water division, we have a SCADA system that controls the tank elevations and incoming water from Suez water. And that system employs a unlicensed radio frequency system, which has worked very well for many years up until the last few months, and we are getting some type of interference where that system is now failing. So we're essentially running the system on hand at this point, which going into the summer months, we really can't do. So we did a couple things. We reached back out to our SCADA contractor to see what options we have. One is to put in a licensed FCC type of radio system at a cost of about $41,000. The other option is to put in a system that runs off the Cox, called the VAN line. It's a high-speed line that Cox has, and that's what actually Kent County and Providence Water Supply Board uses, because their different areas that they have the SCADA signals are so far apart, they couldn't use a radio system if they wanted to. The last thing we did was, in conjunction with Lance Whaley, we reached out to Federal Engineering that's doing the 400 frequency work for the town, and we asked them, is there any way of trying to determine what the source of the interference is? They indicated we can do a spectrum analysis, which would require a field testing with equipment. I did receive a quote from them after the memo was written. The cost for that is not insignificant. It's $39,900. So almost the price of the licensed radio system, and significantly more than the fiber landline system. And even Federal said once we're done, there's still a possibility that they may not be able to definitively determine the source of the communication interference. So my hope was that if we could determine it, we'd go after, be it a cell carrier, whoever the offending party is that's interfering with that signal. But even Federal said when they conclude their study, that may not be possible. So I think with that uncertainty, my recommendation is to go with the fiber AN type system. And RE Erickson with SCADA, they are a proprietary service. They're like the intellectual creator of the system. So it is what I would consider a sole source at this point. And the same for our wastewater division. SCADA system, our sole source. Once we get on board with a engineering firm for that work, we're kind of tight. All I can say is RE Erickson's been very good to us. They're very capable, and I feel that the price they gave us was very favorable. So that's my recommendation.
All right, thank you, John. With that, we have reached 7:30. So Susan, if you wouldn't mind getting us ready to record the regular meeting.
Okay. Let's stop sharing this.
And am I ready to go at any point, or?
Colleen, have you allowed the attendees in yet?
So everyone is in the meeting, public meeting starting at 7.
Okay.
And we are live streaming. So you are good to go, April.
All right. Good. I did actually bring my own gavel, so
Okay.
I'll gavel us into session. Welcome everyone to this meeting of the South Kingstown Town Council. It is Monday, April 13th. The time is 7:31. Thank you all for joining us. If you are watching on the live stream and want to participate more fully, you should see directions to participate through the Zoom link there with the live stream. We have just concluded our work session. Our first order of business here is the pledge to the flag. I will ask our town clerk to lead us in that tonight. And then I would ask everybody who's on the call to mute themselves so it doesn't sound.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. That worked well. And now, will the clerk please take the roll?
Council President Collins,
Here.
Council Vice President DeCruz,
Here.
Councilwoman Kelso,
Here.
Councilman McEntee,
Here.
Councilman McEntee,
Here.
okay, and Councilman Veely.
Here.
All members are present at this virtual meeting.
Thank you very much. Before we get into any of the items of business, I just want to say one of the important things is that some people are going to be joining us just on phone calls. It's going to be hard for us to remember to state our names before we say anything during the meeting. And it's counterintuitive because we do see our names flash up there and our faces flash up there, but not everybody's going to have that ability. So just try to be aware of that as we move through the meeting. I'll try to remind people if we start failing at that. And in general, I'll try to run the meetings pretty much as we ran them in the council chambers. Council members, keep your mics open. And, if it turns into a case where we start talking over each other, we can go to a more stilted sort of thing where everybody has to raise their hand. But hopefully we don't have to go there. So with that, let's get underway. When we get to the public comment portion of the meeting, for everybody watching there at home, there's a way for you to raise your hand, which is how I'll recognize you. And I'll just go in order of who raises their hand first. All right, with all that out of the way, item 4 on the agenda is the approval of minutes of previous meetings.
I'll make a motion to approve for A, B, and C.
Second.
So moved. That was Rory and then Joe. So we have a motion and a second. This is Abel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. Item 5 is the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve item 5, the consent agenda.
Second.
And that was Bryant making the motion and Deb seconding. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 That motion carries. All of our licenses this evening are consent agenda, so that brings us straight to communications tonight. Communication 7G are emails from Karen Humes, Benjamin Wood, and Margaret and James McGregor concerning pedestrian safety issues on Middlebridge Road. Those have been received and placed on file. We heard a little bit about this during the work session, but definitely an important topic of consideration considering the tragic death on Middlebridge Road this past week. Do we have anybody who, Rob, are you there with us at this point?
Yes, I'm here. So we have been dealing with Middlebridge for a number of years. This is not a completely unforeseeable circumstance. The road is a road that's been known to have pedestrian vehicle conflicts for a long time, as many other roads in South Canada, other the state do. We've made a lot of attempts to improve traffic safety, pedestrian bicycle safety in particular on Middlebridge Road. John Schock, our Director of Public Services, can give us sort of an overview of what has happened in the past. I think that that's useful for the council and for the public to know. But before I turn it over to John, I'd like to just talk about more recent developments and activity around this. We had actually met with a resident from Middlebridge Road, Tim O'Neill, about 4 weeks ago, before this unfortunate fatality and before the COVID-19 event began. And we had laid out a strategy for deploying some technology on Middlebridge that we believe can have a positive impact. I will say that I'm cautious about saying we're going to solve the problem. The characteristics of Middlebridge and the characteristics of many of our roads here in Rhode Island in the Northeast and the behavior of drivers makes it difficult for any of us to say we're going to solve a traffic problem or a pedestrian problem until behavior changes on the infrastructure are going to be of limited effect. But what we had talked to Tim O'Neill about was deploying speed feedback signs. These are the flashing signs that tell drivers how fast going as they go by the sign. They're an interesting intervention because they do provide information to the driver that is more interactive or more aggressive than simply having a sign. A yellow sign doesn't provide any feedback, doesn't really capture the driver's attention. There's some evidence that these signs does have an impact on driver behavior. People do slow down when they see, their speed flashing above what the posted speed limit is. There's some evidence that people become habituated to these signs over time, so in fact, declines over time. Middlebridge is actually a good place for this technology because it's a cut through to Narragansett, and a lot of folks who drive on that road are not sort of regular drivers who are likely to habituate as quickly as you might see in other neighborhoods. So we're hopeful about that technology. We're looking forward to seeing whether it works because it's an intervention that we've talked about deploying elsewhere in town as well. The other thing we had talked about was looking into whether or not striping, putting white lines on either side of the road to give the impression that the travel lanes are narrower, and in fact making the travel lanes, at least by paint, narrower, might have a positive impact on driver behavior. John and Rich Bourbonnais, the town engineer, were looking into that intervention as well. The final intervention that's been discussed and that we've looked at before is whether or not three-way stop could be put in, whether it makes sense to put stop signs going north, south, east, west, whatever the orientation is at that point, on Middlebridge and Torrey Hill Road. That three-way stop is an interesting idea that a number of people have brought to the police department over the years. The challenge here is that you put a traffic stop in the middle of a road, a thoroughfare, you can increase rear end collisions. And when you put a stop sign at the bottom of the hill, particularly in the winter months, you can increase rear end collision. The real question has been, can that be done in such a way that it will not cause harm? We suspect that it'll slow people down. And so long as it's not also going to cause rear end accidents, it's a plausible intervention. John Schock and Chief Chamber are looking into whether the traffic counts are such that that's an appropriate thing for us to do at this point. The previously indicated that it probably not intervention. We hoped to do a study about this time, but given that the traffic counts are because of the COVID-19 stay-at-home environment, we're not really going to be able to do that traffic study right now and get numbers that we can rely on. So we are at this point contemplating waiting to do the traffic study for the stop sign investigation until July or August, which is actually good timing as well because it will be the peak of the travel period. We'll see the highest travel or traffic counts during those months of the summer. With that, I would ask John Schock to give us an overview of where we've been on Middlebridge Road. Again, this is not an entirely new story to us, and we have made a lot of attempts to improve things. with that, I'm going to hand it to John and John go through his, and also anything that I've missed or have characterized poorly, please correct.
Hey, John, before you,
Hey.
John,
Yes.
before you go on,
Sure.
this is Bryant. Rob, during the work session, you mentioned your issue with communication with the tree down and power lines across your driveway. The reason why I bring that up is I think some people are having
Yeah.
trouble hearing you. So if you I just wanted to make sure the public knows your situation and that it's not something that's
Okay.
in your control.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately operating on a cell phone at this point.
All right, thanks, Rob. This is Abel. John, are you there with us?
Yes, John Schock, Public Services Director. So just, I'll give you a little bit of history where we've been in the past. For Middlebridge, I'm just gonna run down a list quickly of what we've done. So to give you an idea of, trying to, have the, trying to deal some of the traffic issues down there. So we've installed 16 25-mile-an-hour traffic speed limit signs between the bridge at Middlebridge Road and Radial Drive. RIDOT was able to put in 25-mile-an-hour pavement markings, Middlebridge Road northbound before and after Radial Drive. And there's also 2 southbound between Bridgetown Road and Radial Drive. RIDOT also installed curve ahead pavement markings down by the curb by Middlebridge Road in both directions. And they installed shoulder delineators on the north end of Middlebridge Road between Bridgetown and Radial Drive. As did they restripe the crosswalks at Treaty Rock Park. We were with the town of Narragansett, I believe, last year to try to mitigate some of the no through trucking. Middlebridge Road and Narragansett agreed to put a no through trucking sign up at the intersection of Old Boston Neck Road and Middlebridge Road. RIDOT also erected new chevron signs on the guardrail at the curve at the southerly end of Middlebridge Road. Our highway division installed share the road signs. On Middlebridge Road, there's also 6 watch for children signs. And we also installed high prismatic reflectors on the guardrail and the curve. So we have tried to, as best we can to date, to try to reduce some of the speeds and make, some visual cues to the drivers down there. That being said, as the manager indicated, we're gonna, look at the traffic counts to see if we can meet the warrant for a 3-way stop at Torrey Road and Middlebridge Road. And we're also looking at, the speed feedback signs. Typically, you'd want 1 in each direction in close proximity to each other. Where that should go, it should be the south end or the north end, north of Torrey or south of Torrey Road. That's yet to be decided. And then lastly, in the capital budget, we have funding for a more comprehensive townwide traffic calming study to try to determine what traffic calming techniques are appropriate and where they should be put in town based upon density criteria, pedestrian use, that type of thing. But that would be subject to the capital budget and the bond referendum in November. So other than that, we're proceeding with, the other 2 items that the manager talked about at this point.
This is Bryant. Any idea how long Middlebridge Road is?
I can look it up. It's probably a couple miles in length. I can pull it up on GIS real quick here. Segments, Brian, or do you want the whole length?
I'm sorry?
You want segments of the road or the entire length?
Just the entire length, because just so we can get perspective, because you rattled off a number of signs on that road, and that seems
Yeah, there's
quite a
16,
lot.
16 speed limit. We put a number of them up years ago at the request of the property owners. So we have increased the number of signs out there. So quickly in length, the road, I'm going to say, is it's about 11,000 feet to 2 miles, a little over 2 miles in length.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And John, this is Abel. Just in terms of if that intersection doesn't warrant stop signs in all directions, are there other ways of slowing traffic that we haven't explored, you know, around
Yeah,
that?
I think the one that has merit that the manager touched on is kind of creating a visual chicane by painting bump outs in the road to kind of narrow down the lane widths. So we're looking at, you know, the engineering standards for that. We want to make sure that we don't narrow them down too much where somebody gets the visualization to go across the center line into the oncoming lane. So, yeah, I think that one makes sense to investigate. It's relatively inexpensive. We could do a trial in-house with our paint. I think ultimately, if it would work out, we'd want to have our painting contractor do it in epoxy, but we could do it in waterborne as a test.
So Abel, Joe Veely here. So just a comment to the manager and to John Schock. This has been a challenge financially for the councils for 5 or 6 years now. And we have a number of things like these. So we last year had the challenge with the EMS, trying to get that last third shift on. So this is one of those challenges that we have such a demand on our budget from some other things that a lot of these things, I don't want to say they get pushed to the edge of the plate, but they have a harder time staying on the plate. So just a comment, when we start talking about budgets, I think everybody agrees that this topic and others are very important. And again, I think we have to do a better job of balancing the budget, balancing all the things that belong in a budget. And this is one of those things that's very, very important. Some of the recommendations that John and Rob are making now are not frankly that expensive, but there are some proposals that I'm sure will come forward that are. But if they're warranted, we need to find a way to start balancing this. Just an observation. It's a budget discussion as well. Thank you.
Sure.
So Abel, if I can for a moment, it's Debbie Kelso. What costs are we looking at for the feedback signs? What's the neighborhood for the LED signs?
So John Schock, they typically run about $4,000 a piece for a solar. We'd recommend going with a solar panel rather than have a dedicated meter for them. So about $4,000 a piece. So you look into one in opposite direction, there's $8,000 per site.
And what's the life of them, John? How long do they last?
Yeah, I don't have any experience, obviously, because we don't have any, but I mean, the only thing I can equate it to is we went with the solar powered school flashing lights on High Street. You know, they've been in a couple of years now and they seem to be working fine.
Seems like money well spent to me.
Yeah, it does. But I'm sorry, this is Brian, but to Joe's point, Middlebridge isn't the only road. You know, we have plenty of roads. So the question is, how much do we allocate for other roads as well?
All right, this is Abel. Any other questions for John or Rob on this item? Do I hear a motion? If not,
Well, Rob, I have a quick question for you. You mentioned that, you know, the data currently is unreliable due to the lack of traffic because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Is there past data that we've collected that we could use to rely on to quantify, you know, what direction to go by makes sense, or we not have that data?
Oh, sure. This is Rob Zarnetsky. We do have data from the past. The question is whether we should be using data and simply extrapolating from the past, or whether we take advantage of the fact that we have a new interest in doing an analysis and actually count what's going on out there right now. The chief is on the line, Chief Jaber. He can also speak to the past data, the past study, and how we could extrapolate. The question is really just whether you use old data or whether you collect new data.
I find a problem with trying to collect new data in the coming months with, you know, that information probably not being, you know, as accurate as, past information, considering the times we're in right now, because we don't foresee this ending anytime
Right.
soon.
That's right. And that's why, again, this is Rob Zarnetsky, I'm sorry. That's why we haven't wanted to do the study right now. That's why we are suggesting that we really can't get to an accurate count, at least until the summer. So yes, we have previous data. The previous analysis was the analysis that got us to the concern that we might see increased rear end collisions. The question is whether anything's changed, what's going on out there now. And the chief will have better information on that. So I would suggest that we let the chief, who's raised his hand, speak to the specifics of the past studies.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. My video keeps going off, and my lights are flickering, so I'll do the best I can here. In June of 2019, June 4th to June 10th, we did a study at Treaty Rock of the southbound traffic. And excuse me, during that week, there were over 17,000 vehicles clocked. The average speed was 25.81, so 26 miles per hour. 85% of those vehicles were 30 miles per hour. And the maximum speed at that time was 47. I'm not sure what vehicle, that could have been a police vehicle. In September of 2019, September 26th to October 2nd, we did a second study, and it would have been Middlebridge northbound, and there were 13,265 vehicles clocked. The average speed then was 28 miles per hour. Maximum speed out of all those vehicles, there were a few at 48 miles per hour. In the last 3 years, we've stopped 380 motor vehicles on Middlebridge Road, and of those 380, half were given warnings and half were given citations. So that's just a rough estimate. Up until, since the tragic accident, up until today, police officers have taken 55 separate posts, and they've written, out of that, those, I think they've written six tickets and 3 warnings out of those 55 posts. And a lot of that has to do with COVID-19, limiting their contact with operators.
This is Abel. Thanks, Chief. I would be hesitant to use old data from those studies, especially given that, the GPS sort of wayfinding apps have become so much more popular over just the past few years. And I think a lot more people are using Middlebridge as a, cut through because of those apps. So I do think we need good data to look at. And obviously we can't get it right now. Any other thoughts on this item?
Yeah, if I may, Abel, it's Debbie Kelso. The traffic that the chief just spoke about is less than a year old. June of 2019 and September of 2019. I think that's fairly current.
I don't think that, this is Abel. I don't think that that's coming from the actual traffic study, is it? I might have misheard. I thought that was just data on the.
That was on the number of vehicles, and the average speed that we just heard was June and September.
Correct.
Too old to be valid?
No, I think there was just a misunderstanding, because I'm sorry, this is Brian speaking. My first thought when we were going to talk about it was how old is the data for, compared to things like Waze and things like that. But Waze was very popular last year and the year before. So I would be comfortable using that data from June and September.
I wasn't, we do plan on doing a new study, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what we had done in the past, that we were down there and we were actively patrolling that area. So whether or not you want to use that data, we're prepared, and we are in the process of getting some new data, including Torrey Road. So, but that'll take a little bit longer. And we have the issue, as someone mentioned earlier, with the COVID-19, so many people are not traveling. So, and URI is closed and the beaches are closed. So that's going to make a big difference as well.
So this is Rob Zarnetsky. I think it's important, and I think we should get John Schock back in this conversation, but I think it's important to recognize that the traffic data that the chief has cited is not at the intersection of Torrey Hill Road and Middlebridge Road, and that the kinds of vehicle-to-vehicle conflicts aren't necessarily going to be revealed based on information about speeds up the road, even a quarter mile. So I strongly recommend we get John Schock and provide some insight into what he's looking for the data to shed light on. It's not just the speed and it's not just the volume. It's the characteristics of the intersection and the behavior at that intersection.
So this is John Schock, and that's exactly what the point I was going to raise. We don't have data for the bottom of Torrey Road. So the new study would look at that data and data for Middlebridge Road in close proximity to that intersection. That's the data that we need in order to make an informed decision to see if a three-way stop meets the MUTCD warrants for that intersection.
This is Brian speaking.
Brian, did you have something to?
Yeah, the one thing I could say is that could we take this in steps, like use some of the information that we currently have, maybe for the traffic number, what are those called again? The speed traffic.
The back signs?
Yeah, the back signs. And then also still move toward working towards doing a study at whatever intersections or locations that are warranted at the same time.
So this is Rob Zarnetsky. Yes, it's exactly what John Schock and the town engineer are doing. We are moving ahead on feedback signs because we have had a plan to deploy those going back some time. We've been trying to figure out how to finance feedback signs throughout town. John has talked about the painting of lines to narrow the travel lane. That's a intervention we can engage in without any further study, without any significant further study beyond what we already have. And then figuring out what's going on at the intersection. And I want to clarify something. When I say that we have data that was old data, there were older data related to that intersection. The chief's data are Middlebridge Road data, but they're not at that intersection. We need to figure out what's going on at the intersection of Torrey Hill Road and Middlebridge Road. That we're going to have to get. I mean, we're going to have to understand what's going on there. We don't have anything right now that we can rely on to tell us what's going on at that intersection. Hopefully, COVID-19 won't keep us hamstrung for long, and we'll be able to figure out whether the warrant fits that location. It's the hill, and it's the fact that traffic is moving along that main thoroughfare, and you're putting a stop right in the middle of that thoroughfare that is the reason for concern here.
Thanks, Rob. This is Abel, and I'm just going to take this opportunity to throw a sort of curveball out there. Do towns ever do anything like, I could see, if three-way stops don't work at that intersection, could you just stop the traffic going north and south? Say, you just have access to those neighborhoods to the north from Bridgetown, and then Torrey Hill feeds into Middlebridge. You'd cut that beach traffic off that way. I mean, obviously you're creating access problems and potentially, I think you'd want to have access for emergency services purposes getting down to Middlebridge, but weigh those two things against each other. Anyway, that's the out of left
So
field.
this is Rob. This is actually Rob Zernetsky, and they do. I mean, the truth of the matter is communities create dead ends for other than traffic reasons. You know, when it's deemed appropriate for social and community reasons, communities do create dead ends. And essentially what you're contemplating is making two dead ends out of Middlebridge. It does create a traffic flow problem, but if that problem is deemed less of an issue than the social challenges that come with maintaining the traffic flow, yes, communities do that.
Any other crazy ideas out there? All right. Do I hear a motion on communication G?
Joe Veely here. I'll make a motion to place communication G on file and refer it to the town administration to address.
Second.
So moved. That second was from Deb. Any further discussion?
Can we have a time frame on when we expect to hear back from the analysis from the data that we're expecting to look at in July?
So this is Rob. I think we can give the council a report on deployment of feedback signs sooner than we can give you a report on what the traffic study has concluded. The trick on the traffic study is going to be getting to a traffic flow that is normal or normal enough that we can feel comfortable that we know that what we're observing at the intersection is in fact a typical condition. That's not gonna, we're gonna know whether we have normal traffic until we know we're beyond the COVID-19 impact. So a timeline on that, John, what do you need? 2 weeks on the data collection? Is John Schock there?
He needs
Yeah,
to
John,
unmute
you're muted.
himself.
Unmute, John.
I'm sorry, John Schock, Public Service Director. So, 2 weeks to collect the data and then probably 2 weeks to determine if it meets the warrants or not. And if it does meet the warrant for three-way, then obviously we'd have to go to the council for a public hearing to add those stop signs north and southbound.
It's Debbie Kelso. I would think we need URI to be in session, however, to make it to get all the data we need. I would think that's a big cut through for URI, and I wouldn't want to make a decision without having that traffic.
So John Schock, so we could do it twice. We could do it in July to catch summer traffic. Obviously, university's out till next fall. We can do it again in the fall.
Right, that sounds.
We'll find out in the summer. The traffic counts and speeds may actually be higher, which would benefit having, positive warrant analysis.
Mhm.
If it fails a warrant analysis in the summer, then we can do it again in the fall and see if it meets the warrant analysis then.
Okay.
And this is Rob again. John, just so folks understand, the reason that an increase in traffic actually increases the likelihood that the warrant for a stop sign would attach is because the more traffic there is, the less likely it is that you're going to have somebody speeding through and accidentally ramming into somebody at a stop sign they weren't expecting to be there. Is that correct?
So there's a couple, John Schock again, there's a number of criteria. One is speeds. So whether it's low counts during this time of year or in the summer, if somebody's speeding, we look at that. We also look at the number of vehicles, that's the traffic counts. And we also look at accident data specific to the intersection. So we'll be reaching out to Chief Jaber and his staff to try to determine what's on file for accident data as well. So all those different criteria, we look at them as a whole and then determine if it meets or doesn't meet the warrants for a three-way stop.
And this is Rob again. Just so the council knows, the charge that we're operating under here is this. I have not any opposition whatsoever to doing a three-way stop at this intersection. None whatsoever. So long as we're not going to do harm. So long as the warrant shows that we're not more likely to have rear end collisions, we're fine with doing three-way stops. They're cheap. It's not, it's not a question of whether this is an expensive intervention. It's inexpensive. This is not because anyone is concerned about the cost of a new program or something. The question is just whether or not we're going to genuinely improve public safety. And if the warrant shows that we're more likely to cause accidents that cause whiplash or cause people to be, hit in their vehicle, it may not be the right thing to do. So we do need to understand what's going on at this intersection.
All right, this is Abel. Thanks, Rob. Any further discussion? We do have a motion in a second. And so it seems like there's really no way to answer your concern immediately, Rory, but I think we'll keep an eye on this issue as we move along. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. And that brings us to communication J, an email dated April 3rd, 2020 from Jane Bissett concerning the town's methods of communicating with residents during the COVID-19 crisis. We have received that. Our first town council meeting, which we did remotely with a teleconference line, was not a roaring success. And hopefully people find that this medium is a little better. Rob, do you have any response to this communication?
So yes, the concern that was expressed here is really more about how folks are going to know which boards and committees are actually going to have the meetings that they've got posted. We did go through and change all of the meeting schedules so that they say canceled meetings. There are some boards and committees, two, the planning board and the zoning board of review, that will be having meetings, and those are still showing as actual meetings. This resident was concerned about the zoning board of review in particular because the meetings were not shown as canceled. That's because they're not canceled. They are in fact going to go ahead as virtual meetings. Amy Reiner's been outstanding about making sure that we update our website and get as much information out there as we can. We're not perfect. We're trying like heck, and sometimes it feels like we're pedaling faster than the bicycle's moving. And I think this may be one of those cases where we just didn't anticipate someone running into the ambiguity of knowing that meetings are canceled, but seeing a schedule that didn't indicate that the meeting was canceled, because in that particular case, it wasn't. Amy may be able to provide the council with more information if you'd like to see if she has more to add.
So I'll follow what Rob shared, and if any of the council have any questions, you're welcome to ask. Amy Reiner, Director of Administrative Services. I've been doing my best to coordinate the internal and external communications regarding the COVID-19 situation, along with the department and division heads with the town. As for the status of the meetings, several weeks ago when they were initially suspended, initially canceled, we did push out a press release to identify which were canceled, which would still be held, which was available on our Facebook page, on our website, and we also did update the web calendar on our homepage, as well as, I believe, Clerkbase, which with those statuses indicating that they were canceled. On occasion, a meeting may not be held. We may simply delete it from the calendar. In this case, because of the current situation, we have been leaving the meeting, but indicating clearly in the title or the name of the meeting that it is canceled. And we've been continuing to do that throughout the last few weeks, and I anticipate for the next several as well. But if there's any other questions about any type of communication, either on the web or on Facebook or to our employees, I'm happy to answer.
This is Abel. Just the final point that the woman made in her letter was about certified mail that we might be delivering to, abutters for projects that are ongoing. Maybe,
Right.
obviously, are we taking all precautions?
So this is,
Go ahead.
so this is Rob Zernetsky. It's our understanding that the Postal Service is not requiring signatures for certified mail at this point. But it is a legal requirement. It's the surest way to make sure that all abutters are receiving notification of board meetings that might impact their property interests. So we will continue to send certified mail to the abutters, knowing that the Postal Service is taking all of the precautions it deems appropriate and necessary to protect the public health.
And this is Abel. And am I right that, critical staff who are going into town hall, I guess stuffing these envelopes potentially are being tested as they go in, their temperature wise. And so we've got fairly good controls.
So actually, most notices of this sort are mailed by the applicant, not by the town. So they're sent typically from either the applicant itself or by the attorney for the applicant. So we don't actually control those mailings, but the likelihood of COVID-19 transmission by paper is not great. What we know and what the Postal Service has advised is that there's a system for dealing with this. The virus is not so virulent that it survives on paper for a very long time. The studies that we've seen indicate about a day. I'm not saying that there's no reason to be concerned, but it's not as bad as being in a room with someone who's infected, and the danger is not as great as many of the other interactions that we have to engage in, such as still going to the grocery store.
All right, thank you. Any other comments on communication J? All right, do I hear a motion on item J?
So I'll make a motion to, it's Debbie Kelso, I'm sorry. So I'll make a motion to place item 7J on file and ask the staff to continue with their current efforts. They seem to be very successful on with the communication.
I'll second that.
So moved. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Abel, it's Micah. So if you just identify that Rory seconded, that's all.
All right, yes, that second was by Rory, and that was me speaking. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that motion carries as well. That brings us to item 8 on the agenda, which is comments from interested citizens. So we do this every meeting, of course. This is the opportunity for people who are attending to share their views. I see that people are already raising their hands. If you don't see it where there's participants labeled on your screen, you can click on that and there's a little pop-up and you can see at the bottom right a little button that says raise hand. So please do that if you would like to share. At this point, I will call on Karen to share her views. You are unmuted, I believe, from my end. If you are on a phone, you have to press *6 to unmute yourself. Or if you're on your computer, you also have to unmute yourself using the little microphone icon.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so this is Karen Humes. I obviously wrote one of the emails that you got about our neighbor, Alan. My concerns about what you've discussed with Middlebridge is, number one, he was killed during this time, just so that everybody's aware. It's not like he was killed prior to the lockdowns or the people staying home. This was during that time. This is not a new cut through. It's been a cut through since I was a little child growing up in Metatuxet. My kids don't even feel safe walking to the park because that's where he was killed. It's not down by Torrey Road. It has nothing to do with Torrey Road. He was killed in front of the park walking his dog. So that's where my main concern is. Chief Jaber comes down, has his guys come down whenever we call him. We could call him daily. We don't, because we can't tie up the entire police force down here. So the neighborhood, number one, if you're going 25 miles per hour, those stop signs at the end of Torrey shouldn't be a problem. You should be able to stop if you're going the speed limit. So the number of rear-ending accidents, it really shouldn't even be a concern, because if they're going 25, they're not gonna rear-end somebody in front of them. We've asked about looking into speed humps. I know we can't do the bumps, but if you do the raised crosswalks, there is a crosswalk right by Treaty Park. If we could make that into a raised crosswalk, or, you know, raised crosswalk like it is on Main Street, and slow people down. Sidewalks. We've asked for sidewalks for years. We have nowhere that we can safely walk. I mean, we jump out of the way on a daily basis, and you're jumping into trees, you're jumping into ditches, you're jumping into people's mailboxes. If we could make it marked local traffic only, so that Waze and GPS stop sending all these tourists down here, that would be a huge help. We've asked for that for years too. I mean, we can't prevent the locals from cutting down here. I get that. But why can't we stop having the college kids that don't know about Middlebridge that would go around, or all of our tourists, make them go around? But, you know, yeah, we have the speed signs and the telling you how fast you're going. They've put those down here numerous times over the years. It works for when they're here. It slows some people down, and then you watch the other people just fly right by because they know there's no consequence. Like, we need a long-term solution that's going to stay rather than go away. But it's not like he was killed, you know, in a high traffic time. He wasn't. He was out walking his dog. My kids walk over there. They're petrified to go over there. So more long-term is what we need. I mean, the traffic studies, we can all tell you, we live here. I know you need them for legal purposes, but they fly down these roads every day. So we need a more long-term solution. And the stop sign at Torrey is a great way to start, but we shouldn't have to wait an entire another summer for that stop sign to be placed in there.
All right, thank you, Karen. And that brings us to Kate Mansonetti. I will unmute you. There you go.
I'm unmuted now, yeah?
Yep.
I wanted to also speak to the Middlebridge Road situation. So a couple people have mentioned that they've been dealing with Middlebridge for some time now. And I agree with the fact that the police have been trying to work with the residents of Middlebridge and when we say sometime, it's not 4 to 5 years, it's like 20 years. It's been a problem since I got my license 30 years ago. My parents used that cut through when I was a little child 48 years ago. Locals have been using that cut through forever. So I guess my point there is waiting for URI to be in session. It is a factor as far as, yes, your data collection and how many cars are actually traveling the roads. But in fact, it's when there is less traffic on those roads, the speed is increased. If there's no one in front of you and you're on Middlebridge Road, you're hauling. And that's what happened on this particular evening. And I think what makes this tragedy even more tragic is literally the residents in that neighborhood have spoken to the town for years saying, is it going to take someone getting killed to have this taken care of? And that's exactly what has happened. And as my brother lives on the corner, right when you come out of off of Middlebridge, Lafayette right there, he has 2 little boys, and as Ms. Humes was saying, they won't walk on the roads. It's Timmy O'Neill had to buy his own signs, and I believe they say OMG, slow down. Like, this has been going on for decades. And I understand the police have worked very hard to get something done, but we can't wait for another study and another season. And to Joe's point, the funds are just going to disappear if we keep waiting. It happened during COVID-19, so the roads were clear. Obviously, the woman was impaired, or supposedly impaired. So that's a whole other, there are so many factors brought into it, but the point being is this has been a discussion for decades, and it needs to be addressed immediately. So thank you.
Thanks, Kate. All right, so again, this is comments from interested citizens. Sorry, this is Abel Collins speaking. If you would like to make any comments, this is the time to do it. If you see on your screen the participants little box, you can raise your hand there, and I will call on you. I'm not seeing any new hands being raised. Are there any comments from council members? Right. Well, with that, we can move on to the town manager's report.
All right. Well, I'm gonna try to, because I don't have a screen that I can share with you. I was talking in the pre-session, or in the work session, that about how a tree had fallen in my front yard across the wires, and there's live wires and a police car at the end of my driveway, because the road is not safe right now. So I am operating at this point on a cell phone, and I don't have access to the manager's report that I'd like to share with the council. I will walk through sort of the highlights here, and sort of let folks know what we've been sort of trying to puzzle through. You know, COVID-19 obviously has been taking an awful lot of our time. It's been really almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for a large number of the town employees. The bottom line on where we are with COVID-19 and the response to the various executive orders and emergency orders from the governor's office, and the orders that we've put in place here locally, is that the town government is still operational. Everything that the public might need from the town is available. If you need a marriage license, if you need a death certificate, if you need to record a land transaction, all of those functions are still being performed. We still have paramedics going out and responding to people's needs as they arise. Interestingly, we've actually seen a decrease in the number of calls and the call volume for the paramedics. I suspect that folks are reluctant to go to the hospital, so we are not getting as many calls over the course of the last month as we historically have. But all of those operations are still ongoing. The police are still responding to all crimes. We actually have had a decline in crime. It's not a huge change in the number, but with fewer people out and about, fewer people driving, fewer people driving after having spent the night out. There's fewer crimes, but the police are out and on the beat. And where they're not just doing the ordinary work of patrolling the streets. They're out informing the public, and particularly in the last couple of weeks, out-of-state residents who have vacation homes here. The police have been out informing them of the local orders so that even those coming into South Kingstown from out of town know the circumstances that we're operating under and know the local rules when they arrive here in town. So, I mean, generally speaking, we're fully open and operating. We have not seen layoffs. Every town employee who worked in an office has been either equipped with personal protective equipment to keep them on the job at a government facility, or they're working from home at this point. The only group of people that we've had to lay off are school crossing guards. There's just no sort of function that neatly fits into the role of a school crossing guard. So we have not been able to keep those folks on the payroll. Beyond that, Zach and I have been spending the time to figure out what the implications of all of this are for our for the coming year. Council a memorandum outlining the sort of issues that we think need to be addressed, and issues around schedule and just timing of the budget. A number of communities in Rhode Island have been wrestling with the idea that they're not to be able to abide by their regular budget adoption schedule. They're looking at strategies like issuing tax anticipation notes to keep them going through the first quarter of the next fiscal year. Some municipalities are contemplating keeping the current tax levy, the current rates going, and adopting their budget later in the year. Our town charter is pretty clear on the schedule for adoption. Budget has to happen by the 1st of May under our charter. We could, in theory, because we're operating under under an emergency order, we could delay adoption of the budget. But we don't need to delay adoption of the budget because we need to issue notes in anticipation of taxes. We don't need to delay the budget because we cannot figure out how to get to a zero tax increase budget if the council wishes to do that. We can get to the same exact taxes next year as were paid this year without delay in our process. As the council president pointed out at our last meeting, the rainy day fund is there for rainy days, and it is pouring out there, literally right now, pouring out there right now. So we do have a mechanism. I mean, we've designed our fiscal situation here in South Kingstown so that when unforeseen circumstances arise, we can weather the storm without undue hardship or burden on the taxpayers. This is a catastrophic economic event. There's no doubt about it. There's some pretty good indication that we're going to see as much as 30% unemployment, which is higher than the unemployment rate was during the Great Depression. This is a major shift. If we're looking at liquidity and we're looking at the ability of South Kingstown to continue its operations and continue to provide the services that the taxpayers expect from the municipality, we're not in terrible shape. We really have the ability to continue to operate effective programs for the next year without increasing taxes at all, if that's the council's desire. We do not need to radically cut slash the program. And there's reasons why that's not necessarily a good thing for a community to do. If we are adding to the unemployment rolls, we're not necessarily helping the economy, the local economy get better. We're prepared to make cuts. I've gone out to every department head and I've asked every department head to look at what a 10% reduction in their program would mean, both capital and operating, what a 15% reduction in their capital and operating budget would mean. Reduction capital would mean. Those analyses. What I can tell you though is that the impact on the program is greater than the benefit would be taxpayers. For every $1 million that we take off of our program, the benefit to a homeowner with a home of $350,000 worth of value is going to be about $70 a year. The impacts on our programs at $1 million, you're beginning to eat into recreation in a very, very severe way. It's a sixth of the police department's budget to get $70 for that taxpayer. There's not a lot that can be done with the program that isn't going to be more detrimental in terms of service delivery. It is beneficial in terms of tax relief. We can hold the line on taxes without doing our program. But once we get beyond that, once we start talking about actual reductions, then we're talking about cutting personnel and cutting programs in ways that people would notice, that residents would be noticed in a big way. So we're comfortable with the idea that we can maintain our programs going forward, that we can do so without asking for additional taxes. We will have to draw on undesignated fund balance. We've found some savings in our operations. We'll be able to reduce the health and medical benefit cost about $200,000. But beyond that, when we start looking into, new positions, the new positions that are built into the proposal that was made to the council back in March are in some ways not really new. So for example, we have to tell the full cost of 2 paramedics when last year we had only brought on the cost of 1 paramedic because we had brought 2 in halfway through the year. But now is not the time for the paramedic force. Last year, the council had approved using a position in the police department, even though it was occupied by someone who was on injured on duty status. We have backfilled that position. We're asking to keep that position now. Again, we could reduce it, but now it's not reducing the police force. Savings to be had, reductions or eliminating new positions is $106,000 worth of value. We could do that. That is something that's a possibility. But again, the question is whether we're going to see impacts on the program that are detrimental. The new positions that we've contemplated are a supervisor for the animal shelter. And as we've described to the council, there's a dire need for a full-time supervisor, director of the program at the animal shelter. The program has for years operated well, effectively with volunteers, but it's in need of a modernization and a full-time person to make sure that we're doing right by the animals and doing right by the community. My point here is that we know we can get to make and providing the services that the public needs, the public expects from us without raising taxes. Beyond that, it gets really complicated. And when we look at the out years, when we look beyond this year, we have good reason to believe that things in South Kingstown may not be as bad as they will be in other places. Our workforce, the characteristics of the community here are are different. We're not as dependent, not entirely free from dependence, but not as dependent on retail as many communities. That makes us in some ways more resilient. While we are dependent on hospitality and tourism to an extent, ours is a sort of different dependence than you see in many other communities. The restaurants and the bars here in town have clearly suffered a significant setback. Whether that's going to change for the better quickly, we still don't know, but we don't have any reason to believe that it won't change for the better within the foreseeable future. The two major employers here in South Kingstown are the University of Rhode Island and the hospital. There's no reason for us to believe that the university or the hospital's employment structure is going to radically change over the course of the next few years. And if it does, we will have time to adjust. It's not going to be something that we see impact us negatively without any warning. So there's a lot we still don't know. There's a lot we're digging into. There's a lot I wish we could find out. Boy, I wish we had access to state data on the unemployment in town. I wish we had data on federal bankruptcies by sector. We don't have those information readily available to us. But over the next few months and over the course of the next year, we will clearly understand better what's coming our way. And I think that the bottom is we can get through this. We can provide the services that the public needs, and we do not need to add to the burden because we have prepared and we have undesignated fund balance. We've got the rainy day fund that we can use to provide an umbrella. I'm going to end at that. And if there are any questions, I can answer them.
Rob, able. Hold on one second, Brian. I want to sort of apologize to the public out there that I'm sorry, Rob, your audio quality is very tough to, I think, probably understand for a lot of people out there. So I want to assure people that, we're having 2 budget hearings coming up this week, and we fully expect Rob will be able to give a much more, understandable presentation at those opportunities. So we hope you'll join us for those. I want to thank you for those words. Hopefully people can take some solace in them. Bryant, you had.
Thank you. This is Bryant. Rob, I just had a few quick comments or questions. One, not sure if we can disclose this or not, but have any of our town employees been affected by COVID? And if they have, what have we done to help them? That's the first question. The other thing I just wanted to comment on is I know that a lot of our restaurants and bars have really taken a significant impact regarding in this COVID time. But there's plenty of other businesses out there that have also been impacted, and we're not really going to know what it's going to look like for a while, I think. And third was in regards to undesignated funds and the rainy day fund. I have no problem using those funds. My concern is we don't know what 8 months is going to look like, down the road. So what if we use rainy day funds and undesignated funds to kind of, shore up the budget, but then take a bigger toll on our community than we expected, and people are having trouble paying their taxes, because we've never been here before where we've experienced this. We've always had a good collection rate, but my suspicion is the collection rate is not going to be as good as it normally is.
Okay, so let me take the COVID-19 question first. This is Rob. Can folks hear me now?
Yes.
Is this any better? Okay. So on COVID-19, I wouldn't be able to disclose whether we had someone who had tested positive, but we haven't, so I can tell you that, which is good news, and we haven't needed to take any steps to accommodate or work with an employee. We've been lucky so far. With regard to the undesignated fund balance and not knowing the future, you're exactly right. We don't know the future, and we're not going to know what's out there lurking in the dark 2 years or 3 years down the line. The good news for the town of South Kingstown is that the town policy is that we maintain an undesignated fund balance of between 10 and 17% of our operating budget. And this year, the proposed budget had us at about 16%. We've got a good, healthy fund balance. Even if we were to tap the undesignated fund balance at the level that Zach and I are anticipating, we would still have very healthy reserves if we were to find ourselves in trouble a year out from now. Now, that doesn't mean that we can sustain tapping that fund infinitely. And in fact, tapping it the second time around for a deep contribution in a second year would be problematic. There's just no two ways around it. The question is whether we're going to see revenues from the state, revenues from the federal government supplement many of these businesses. I mean, your point about it not just being restaurants and bars is correct. I've spoken to the hoteliers in town, and the hotels are now operating at 2% of their regular revenue. 98% of the revenue in the hotels for the hotels in South Kingstown has dried up. There's severe economic impact on many of the businesses here in town. We're absolutely aware of that. The question is, how long is it going to endure, and what can we sort of guess at? We're not going to be able to get to a resolution if this is the collapsing of major sections of the economy. We're not going to save the programs, the municipal programs, by cutting them now, knowing that later on we're going to have to make more cuts. We do need to be strategic, and we need to be looking for the right interventions at the right time. And as the council president has indicated, I'm prepared to provide a full presentation on Wednesday at the budget hearing, sort of outlining what I think the sort of inflection points in the public sector program revisions are, what the inflections are on private sector recovery, and when and what kinds of signs and signals we should be looking for. Right now, we have good reason to believe that much of the pain will be short-lived. The stock market has rebounded 25% since its biggest drop, or the lowest point 3 weeks ago. Whether that's going to continue and whether we're going to see that come back, obviously nobody knows. But there are some signals that for many of the sectors that we rely on, the education sector at URI, the health sector, the future isn't dismal. The future is, in fact, still bright, and we may be the beneficiaries of a world in which kids still want to go to college, people still need to go to hospitals, and people still want to vacation and own vacation homes in a community, a beautiful community on the seashore in southern Rhode Island. If all of that turns out to be true, then we may not be in dire straits for very long. This is not good, but it's not necessarily the end of the world.
Rob, this is Brian. The only thing I would add to that is that, the last time we had the recession, it took probably like 9 years to get back to where we once were before that recession. So those are just things I'm throwing out there so that we keep those things in mind in regards to our planning. And, we all want this to be over and on the other side of this COVID-19 issue. But at the same time, we're still in a holding pattern in terms of to get back to normal.
So I would say, this is Rob again. I would say this is important to keep in mind though as well. In the Great Recession, we've looked at the impact on revenue. And I look, there's two pieces to this. There's the pain that the community feels, and we've got to be sensitive and we've got to adjust our programs to that. There's absolutely no doubt about it. We have an obligation not to hurt the community we serve. That having been said, when we look at the impact of the Great Recession, the worst year of the recession, 2009, our tax collection rate went from 98% to just above 96%. It did not have a tremendous impact on our revenue. Now, that having been said, this is different than that event, and we shouldn't use it as the be all and end all in our analysis, but it is an important data point. There's evidence from our past that indicates not only in that event, but in the early 90s, we also had a major economic shock locally. The banks and the private banks in Rhode Island closed. We did not have dramatic decreases in our revenue. And in fact, there's some indication that real estate prices in this area are going to go up, because as people look around at this new world we're moving into, suburbs become more attractive again. So we don't know yet, and I'm not presuming anything. I know that we have an obligation to make sure that we do not cause harm. And I know that we can cause harm by overtaxing or underserving, and balancing those things is going to be a trick. It's one that I think we're going to be able to pull off though.
So one last thing, and I'm sorry to take up so much of your time, but it's important. I was thinking about it a few days ago regarding the hospital being one of our biggest employers currently. I think they're hurting right now a little bit because of the fact that they've pulled back, I'm assuming, on elective things that make the hospital money, and people are so prepared and probably operating at lower occupancy rates at even our hospitals. So we know when we spoke to them back in the beginning of the year, they were already kind of running in the negative, and I'm just worried. And I hope that we can find some money for them through either the state or the federal government for some relief.
Right.
Like you said, there are
this is
employers. The other concern I have is whether or not URI, well, the effects of URI in other universities and colleges throughout the US right now. A lot of them are worried about whether or not kids are going to be coming back in the fall. And a lot of them have, plans that are, what if this happens? What if that happens? So there's probably 5 different versions of plans that they're working through to try to figure that out.
This is Rob again. You're exactly right on both counts. And there are complexities with both of those things that we're going to have to figure out. So for example, the hospitals, you're exactly right, probably are not making the revenue that they expected to make during this period of time. They're probably not as profitable right now as they typically would be if they were doing knee replacements as opposed to dealing with COVID emergency response. The federal government and the state government are keenly aware of the stresses on the medical sector. So if we're going to see relief anywhere, in fact, we've already seen it in the $2 trillion stimulus package. Hospitals and higher ed are specifically targeted for federal funds on that $2 trillion. So there's going to be money for those two institutions. And you're right, this event may in fact change attendance patterns at higher education, but it may not change housing choices for faculty and staff. Even if you're not a professor teaching all of your classes in a lecture hall and most of your classes are online, you still may need to be near the lecture hall because you do one of those a week, or you may choose to be near the university because there are other relationship benefits to being near the campus. So it's not clear that any of these is going to be a straight line to up or down, good or bad. We're going to have to puzzle through this.
I agree.
Right, this is Abel. Thanks, Bryant and Rob. Any other questions for the manager? All right, that brings us to item 10 on the agenda, which is appointments. I apologize. Do we have any to make?
Abel, this is Joe.
So we're gonna,
In view of 11D, I think
Right.
we want to skip that this week.
so yeah, I think that makes sense. We will just move beyond appointments for this meeting and for foreseeable meetings, because it'll probably take us a while to schedule interviews if it comes to that. All right, so 11, new business. 11A is a resolution authorizing the renewal of the town council's declaration of emergency adopted at an emergency session on March 15th, 2020, as shown on Exhibit 1 of the agenda, and as further described in a memo from the Assistant Town Solicitor to the Town Manager dated April 9th, 2020.
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve 11A.
Second.
So moved.
This is Joe. I just have a few comments to make. As you all know, I did not vote in favor of the first emergency declaration for a couple of reasons. One is I was very concerned about, and I think we all were concerned about the impact on our local economy. But another concern that I have, and I'm glad that Rob pointed out tonight that this declaration pretty much mirrors what the governor is doing. But I think we need to keep an eye on, I'm concerned about there's a potential incremental infringement on some of our constitutional rights with these declarations. So I just think we have to remain keenly aware that we have to maintain a balance between the safety of the citizens and the constitutional rights, safety of the public and the constitutional rights. And in some cases, to some people, this is perception. To some people, it is real. So I will again not be voting for the extension of the declaration, mostly for those two concerns that I mentioned earlier.
Thanks.
I understand that there's a big responsibility that we have to protect the public safety. I'm just having a real difficult time weighing the infringement on some of our constitutional rights that I perceive that some of these orders are that I think are infringing on. But again, it's a feeling, it's an opinion. It's one voice. Thank you.
Abel, this is Bryant. I do see Joe's point, and I can understand where he's coming from. I do think these are all pretty much mirroring the state level executive orders. And I think from what I recall, the governor was looking at the cities and towns to put the identical or very close to the identical executive orders in place, just to make sure that everyone's aware and that we're all on the same page as municipalities and the state. So I would be in support of it, but I do see, I do have concerns about infringement on constitutional rights, but at the same time right now, I think it's the right way to go. I do, like I said, I do see where Joe's coming from though at the same time.
So Abel, Joe, just once more, real quick. So if I understood Rob's, in the work session, Rob's explanation was that it's sort of backup. So if the governor has issued these orders, if the municipalities will also issue the same orders. They can help with the enforcement. So I get that and I understand that, and it's probably much easier to enforce if you've got more bodies helping to enforce it. But that still doesn't address my concerns about the rights and the impact on the economy. Again, it's a real balancing act trying to figure out how far do you go, because we know that if we don't go far enough, we're going to see more impact medically. So there's a fine line there. It's a real balance that delineated line is not clear to me. Thank you.
So,
Thanks, Joe.
Abel, if I can just make one comment before we go further. So I just always believe that health and safety of the public trumps, and that's no pun intended, wins in this case. I think we have an obligation to the public to do everything we can to keep everyone safe. So I am in full support of extending the emergency declaration.
Okay, thank you, Deb. And this is Abel. I just want to note for the record that Rory made the motion and Bryant, you seconded?
Correct. Well, I think Deb and I seconded at the same time. but-
Yeah, it was tough to tell here. I'll just say for the record that it was Bryant with the second. Any further discussion? From my point of view, I think it's troubling, obviously, when the government sees the necessity of infringing upon constitutional rights. It's obviously considered in serious crises like this. I do think, we have to sort of do our best to follow the guidance of public health officials and, saying that this is really what needs to happen in order to get to the point where we can enjoy our constitutional freedoms again. So I too will support this resolution. It's regrettable circumstances, but we do have to, protect the safety of our public as our highest duty. Any further comments?
Just one final comment from me. This is Joe again. I respect everybody's opinion here, and I'm struggling with it because it is a public safety issue. But just know that I respect your point of view. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. All right. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, say nay.
Nay.
And by a vote of 4-1, that motion carries. And that brings us to 11B, which is a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute an agreement with Good Energy LLC of New York for the community choice aggregation consulting services with the city of Providence, and as further described in a memo from the procurement administrator to the town manager dated March 11th.
Mr. President, this is Rob Zernetsky, if I may.
Please.
So this contract execution is really a writing of a contract between Good Energy and the city of Providence. The city of Providence and South Kingstown were sort of competing to be the first communities in Rhode Island that were able to begin engaging the services of a consultant to go out to market a package of savings for the aggregation of energy services for all of the residents of the community. Providence was able to get a contract in place. They had 2 respondents to their solicitation. Good Energy was the prevailing party. We at South Kingstown had participated in a number of meetings with the city of Providence and Good Energy, and they would have been the firm that we had selected had we done the procurement directly. What this resolution allows is for the manager to execute an agreement with Good Energy, which is a not a broker, but a sort of consultant that goes out and designs a offering that you could put to market. This does not commit the town of South Kingstown to doing anything at this point other than working with the consultant to put together an offering, is how it would probably be expressed, an offering to the market to see whether or not energy providers would be willing to bid and would be willing to give us a price associated with the aggregated services that we've requested the market to offer a price on. Once we've gotten to that point, once we've gotten the consultant to get us to an offer, once we've put the offer out to the market, that's when we would begin to look at whether or not the aggregation is going to happen. This is a preliminary step designed to make sure that we know what we're asking for before we go to the market.
All right, thank you for that explanation, Rob. This is Abel. Do I hear a motion on item B, 11B?
This is Joe. I'll make a motion to approve 11B.
Second.
So moved.
Discussion. This is Brian speaking, sorry. I guess the only thing, I just want to make sure that we're clear that this is just consulting services now, only because, maybe I wouldn't have put award of contract in there because it kind of seems like we're awarding a contract to Good Energy for energy services. Again, it's just something that how I interpret how it was written. And again, I could be completely wrong, but just something to make sure that we don't create any anxiety that we're already going down the path of an approval for the service.
Mr. President, this is Rob Zarnetsky again. I think that's a good point. This is technically a contract between Good Energy and South Kingstown based on the terms and conditions that the Good Energy and Providence contract allows. But this is a no-cost contract should we choose not to go to market. And it's a no-cost contract if we should go to market and choose not to aggregate. So we've still got two points in this relationship before we get to any financial commitment or any contractual commitment beyond good faith in moving toward an offering to the market.
Thank you. This is Brian. Thank you, Rob, for that explanation.
All right, this is Abel. Any further discussion on 11B? All right, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries, and that brings us to 11D, a resolution adopting proposed amendments to the town council's rules of commission, committee, and board appointments, as shown on Exhibit 2 of the agenda. And this came about as a result of discussion at the last meeting when we were discussing appointments to, I forget which board it was, but this will be for all boards as currently written. I think the question tonight, judging from what we discussed in the work session, is whether we want to amend this to apply only to our policymaking boards, or what do we want to do with it, I guess.
So, Abel, this is Bryant again. Sorry. I think this came about actually not just at the last meeting. It came about many months ago as well. We talked about it in terms of being able to at least I can't say interview people that are going to be reappointed, but more have a conversation, see what's working, see what's not working, see if they have any issues, anything we can do to help. Because when we switch the council, by the way, every couple of years potentially, a lot of these folks are appointed for more than 2 years. And there's been plenty of times in the past that I'm not exactly sure who we're appointing or reappointing. And that's why I've asked in the past that we consider doing this. In regards to which boards we're going to apply to, I think we leave it as the ability to apply it to any board or commission to have a re-interview or a Q&A or just a follow-up before we reappoint someone.
Right, thanks, Brian.
Oh, Abel, this is Joe. I think Deb clarified earlier that it's may interview or may interview before reappointment. And so I think if we, in my opinion, if we left it to all and then we could decide, you know, if it's really just policy making boards we want to do, we have that option.
So this is Deb. Rory brought up during the work session about there's a clause in there that says serving on 2 boards at the same time that would eliminate, or it says that participants could not, board members could not serve on 2 boards. So I think we need to amend that. Rory had brought that up during the work session, and we probably want to remove that.
Deb, this is Brian speaking again. Do you think there should be a limit of 2 or leave it unlimited?
Well, I think if anybody wants to serve on more than 2, I think they're heroes. So I don't know. We could choose not to appoint if we felt like the 3rd board was too much. We could choose not to appoint them to that board. I think we could leave that to the council's discretion on how many. But to Rory's comments during the work session, I think we should amend this to remove the line that says no person shall be appointed to serve concurrently on more than 1 commission, committee, or board.
This is Brian. I would be perfectly okay with that. The reasoning for that is that this only really had to do with being able to re-interview people or ask questions before we reappoint. So I do feel that we are lucky that we have some people that want to serve on more than 1 board or commission.
So if I can get clarification from maybe Susan, this was not, this is not something that has been added to this line 5. This was existing, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So where in fact, this was not put in place tonight, this was already in place, but I think we need to remove it.
So this is Joe. I think I agree with both of you, Brian and Deb. If we're talking about policy, making committees like a zoning board or a planning board, but I think if somebody wanted to serve on an advisory board or more than 1 advisory board, the council could weigh that on a case by case. But certainly if it's a policy making board, you certainly don't want someone on planning who's going to also be able to vote on zoning. I mean, that they need to be distinctively separate for a reason. But on the advisory boards, like, you know, EDC and bicycle pedestrian and, you know, the number of them that we look at every week or every 2 weeks, that's, I think I would be comfortable leaving that open. It would be the policymaking boards that I would want to eliminate.
This is Abel. I would agree completely with that point, Joe. Mike, do you have wording that you can?
So here's what I'd like to suggest. I think we need to give some thought to exactly what boards would be exempt from this. In addition to zoning and planning, there might be others. My suggestion would be to adopt the rules that are presented as amended, if you so desire this evening. Let us work on paragraph 5 and come back to you with a further amendment at the next meeting.
So Mike, how does this implicate people who are already serving on 2 boards?
And, you know, the council has made decisions, obviously, and this is just a policy. It's not an ordinance. The council has obviously appointed individuals to more than 1 board. You certainly have that discretion. It's your policy. So I'm okay with waiting another couple of weeks and refining this paragraph 5 a little bit based upon what I'm hearing from you.
Okay.
So Mike, a few clarification questions. This is Rory McEntee.
Yes.
This policy that's been in place, I'm not sure for how long, we've apparently have the ability to violate our own policies. So there's really nothing upholding this.
When the council votes by majority to do something, it can certainly do so. You don't want to be in general in opposition to your own policies. As you're going to do this evening, the policy that you automatically reappointed anyone who came up for reappointment is now being changed. We're going to, based on your feedback, change the paragraph that says no person shall be appointed to another, to more than one board. So.
And we don't need to do a public hearing if it's a policy as opposed to an ordinance?
No, you do not. You do not have to have a public hearing on the councils because each council has its own policies that it implements. And that's good as new councils come into place to change policy. And it is effective for the term of the council. So when a new council is elected in November and they sit in December, they have the ability to do that, you know, just like you have the ability to change it now.
Michael, if I may, I believe that it's either in the charter or it's in a section of the town code that we already prohibit two members from serving on, we already prohibit one person from serving on two paid boards.
Yeah, and we looked at those before. And I think it also may even mention the tax board, assessment board of review, et cetera. So that's another reason I would really like to look at that paragraph 5 before you make any changes to it. I'd recommend not making changes to that paragraph this evening.
So this is Bryant. I'd like to make a motion to approve item 11D as presented, but giving the solicitor instructions to go back and re-look at paragraph 5 to make changes to that and come back to the council.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Deb. Okay. Any further discussion on this item?
Just clarification, this is Joe Veely from Susan. Then it is now a condition of the charter that you cannot, but the clarification is on two paid boards.
I believe it applies to two paid boards.
Okay. And most of our advisory boards are not paid.
A few of our boards are paid.
Right.
Can you identify the boards that are paid? When we say paid, we mean members receiving compensation for serving on that board?
Correct.
Yeah, so Joe Veely, and I think it's I know planning and zoning get a stipend.
And I believe the assessment board of review members get a small stipend as well. The canvassing authority gets a stipend.
And I think right now, Joe Veely, again, we don't have members serving on two of those.
No, we do not.
Okay.
Very good. This is Abel. Any further discussion on this item, 11D? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 That motion, any opposed? That motion carries. 11E is a resolution authorizing a one-year extension of 5-year lease between the town of South Kingstown and Bruce Thunberg, doing business as Twin Peaks Land and Cattle Company of Matunic Schoolhouse Road, to farm an approximately 22-acre parcel of property from December 2019 through December 2020 at the annual fee of $2,500. Said property being a portion of AP 92-2 Lot 39, as further identified on the Town of South Kingstown GIS map, plat 14-76 dated 12/14, and as further described in a memo from the Director of Planning to the Town Manager dated April 7th. Do I hear a motion on this one?
I'll make a motion to approve item 11E. This is Bryant, sorry.
And do I hear?
I'll second it.
So moved. Any discussion? Anything you need to tell us about this one, Rob?
In particular, it is a continuation of a lease in large part because we simply haven't not had a chance to negotiate a longer term lease. The council may at some point want us to go out to bid. Now is not the right time for us to go out to bid, and decide how many cattle to order. So time is of the essence. A one-year extension seems to be the most appropriate way to handle this particular lease.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries. 11F is a resolution authorizing an award of contract to R.E. Erickson of 595 Providence Highway in Walpole, Massachusetts, for Water Division SCADA improvements in an amount not to exceed $15,666, including a $5,000 contingency. This is to be funded from the Water Enterprise Fund unassigned net assets and further detailed in a memo from the Public Services Director to the Town Manager dated March 31st. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve 11F. This is Joe.
Second.
So moved. That was Deb, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we have a motion second. Any discussion on this? I don't know if John's still there, if he wanted to add anything. We discussed it at some length in the work session. Any questions from council members?
No questions.
All right, well, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that motion carries as well. That brings us to the end of tonight's agenda. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
This is Joe. Second.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Deb.
Sorry, that was Deb.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Thank you all for bearing with us through this first meeting. I know the next one will go more smoothly, and hopefully we don't have to do this too many times beyond that. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night. Thanks.
Well done, folks.
Oh.
Oh.